sit here and you study in English. I was told, take your English and put it aside. Here, every lecture, every who comes into the lecture room is only going to speak to you in Russian. So the first year I did the language, and for 7 years that I was there, I did the language. I still speak it, I still write it, I still read it. And so you guys who are students today, life doesn't begin and end in South Africa. It's way wider than that. So think about that. So we are members of Brics today, and so being among the members of Brics, so I'm able to, when meeting with the Russians, I speak the Russian. When meeting with the Brazilians, I speak Portuguese. I'm just short of speaking Chinese. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I try to learn it. It's just too difficult. But again, here we've got young brains, Professor. You've got to make sure that those young brains look beyond South Africa. If I can be able to speak Russian and speak Portuguese and speak Kiswahili and speak the other South African languages, I don't see anything that stops them from doing exactly the same. The future, the globe is becoming smaller and smaller. And if you sit here and you think you speak English, African, Zulu, Tswana, Pedi, you'll have to travel to some of these countries and you must teach yourself. It's not very difficult. These days I see even on the phone, there are apps that are teaching us languages. So I encourage you to read and speak the other languages of other countries, because if you look from China, many of them speak the English that you speak. From Brazil, many of them speak the English that you speak. So we are the ones who are left in the corner not speaking so many of the languages. Dave, you know what I'm talking about. South Africa's membership of Brics has been one of the key strategic partnerships of the democratic South Africa and is key platform for promoting South African trade and investment. I think, Dave, if you recall, this last Brics summit, the president of Russia, President Putin, said to us all, yes, it is good for us to be promoting South-South trade and investment, but one of the things he said, if we don't deal with people-to-people partnership, we might lose sight of things. He even said we must look at the cultural aspects of our different lives and begin to do the people-to-people exchanges, but also look at our cultural aspects, because he was of the view that when people understand each other's cultures and languages and all, they relate to each other very differently. So I'm sure that the next summit, which will be where, in Brazil? Yeah, the next summit, which is going to be in Brazil, we probably will see a much more showcased side of people-to-people culture, art and culture, film, sports, and everything, because that's what they were calling for. That let's go beyond counting dollars and cents and rand and so forth. So the Brics membership is beginning to show its potential benefits to the local economy. Brics partners share the best practice and development models to address and combat these common challenges. More importantly, Brics seeks to advance the restructuring of the global political, economic, and financial architecture into one that is more equitable and balanced, which rests on the important pillar of multilateralism. And for you who are students, you will also go into really appreciating why South Africa keeps on pushing for multilateralism, and it's for you as students to begin to look at who is wanting to turn that around and not make it happen. Brics accounts for 40% of the world's population, and for those who are planning, who are small and medium enterprises, for me as a Minister of Small Business Development, I say when we have 40% of the world's population, you must start thinking about the needs of those people and find solutions so that SMMEs can also get opportunities here. With a combined GDP of approximately 15 trillion, Brics countries account for 19.3% of gross global product, 42.7% of the world's population, and has contributed more than 50% to the world's economic growth during the past 10 years. So let somebody tell us that South Africa is punching above its weight. I'm sure yesterday you realized that the president was answering questions to Parliament, and there were some MPs, I won't name them, who stood up and said that we are wasting money, we are whatever, and we are punching above our weight when it comes to BRICS. And I think that we will have a separate conversation with them, Dave, so that we can give them these figures if they're missing the figures. And besides, for South Africa to be heard and be known and be seen, we need to get into such platforms so that the world can know about us. And if we are still feeling like small brother or small sister, we will get there to where they are too, as long as we understand and appreciate the importance of our participation. Intra-BRICS trade has grown from 567 billion US dollars in 2010 to 744 billion in 2017. South Africa's BRICS trade has grown from 28 billion to 35 billion over the same period. Both SA exports to and imports from BRICS countries have grown at a rate faster than South Africa's global trade, thus increasing the importance of other BRICS countries in South Africa's trade basket. Yes, I know, some will say, no, but we're getting too many of the Chinese cheap products in our country and so forth. The Chinese are here, we need to engage with them and see how we can ensure that we get more factories in South Africa, we produce more in South Africa so that we can also keep the jobs in South Africa. Combined, the BRICS countries account for 14.4% of South Africa's global exports and 24.4% of the country's imports. The key focus for BRICS should be to change the structure of our trade and promote value-added trade so as to contribute to the structural transformation of our economies. The SMME sector in many of BRICS countries' economies contribute up to nearly half of their export, manufacturing outputs, and GDP. Together, we are addressing key barriers, impediments faced by SMMEs and the need for cooperation amongst BRICS countries to effectively address the barriers to trade and investment through the SMMEs. So we can state without any fear of contradiction that across all BRICS countries, small business is big business. In this regard, South Africa has identified small business and cooperatives as critical to creating an economy that benefits all. South Africa's economy needs a thriving small business and cooperative sector to reach national socio-economic goals of a prosperous and inclusive society. It is only through a flourishing, inclusive economy that the challenges of inequality, unemployment, and poverty can be comprehensively addressed. To achieve our development goals require bold and far-sighted interventions. Key amongst these is a progressive funding models that take into account peculiar dynamics that obtain in developing countries. Specifically, this demands the refocusing of the mandate of development finance institutions towards a more transformatory and development agenda. And I think the students here, Professor, will have to look into that because some of our DFI, sometimes they behave exactly the same like the banks, and that doesn't assist your small and medium enterprises. What sets development finance institutions, DFIs, apart from commercial banks is that DFIs seek to address financial market failures and so complement both government resources and market financing. In this regard, the key initiative, they initiate sustainable development by supporting opportunities that are not addressed by the market, by providing risk capital to companies and individuals in partnership with the private sector. Once these markets are developed, the DFIs gradually withdraw and focus on developing other underdeveloped markets. DFIs are expected to address development policy objectives. These include market failures, namely employment creation, income redistribution, import substitution, the development of poor groups or regions, as well as developing new industrial sectors or boosting weak ones. In this regard, it can be stated that the role of DFIs in developing countries has gone beyond addressing market failure to more broadly addressing development failure as such. The creation of the new development bank has happened in the context of a real continuing power shift in the international system from developed industrialized world towards emerging market economies. While some are skeptical about BRICS formation, there is no doubt that this group of countries, along with a number of other similar levels of development, is playing an increasingly important role in the global economy. You will also note that BRICS has the outreach program, which normally invites other countries who are not members of BRICS. And this time around, we even had more countries, including almost all the SADC countries. There is no doubt that developing countries and emerging markets grew impatient with the slow pace of reform at international financial institutions to obtain a bigger voice. Thus, the creation of the NDB represents a desire of major developing countries to play a bigger role in global governance. Another significant reason for the emergence of the NDB is to address government policy objectives to address unemployment, poverty, and inequality. In the recent past, the impact of the global financial crisis has witnessed deepening levels of unemployment, poverty, and inequality in South Africa and Africa. The economic recovery has been slow, particularly amongst Brazil, South Africa, and Russia, as these countries experience economic slump following the global financial crisis, and with China growing at its lowest since the financial crisis. The NDB is a multilateral development bank established in 2014 by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa to mobilize resources for the infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging economies and developing countries, including those in Africa, thus complementing the existing efforts of multilateral and regional financial institutions for global growth and development. To fulfill its purpose, the NDB will support public or private projects through loans, guarantees, equity participation, and other financial instruments. And South Africa, if I may recall, was really lagging behind in terms of accessing the finances that are available there. So working together, government and the private sector, we need to look for the projects, the correct projects that can be funded from here. The initial authorized capital assigned to the NDB was $100 billion US. The current mobilization of funding for projects underscores the NDB's role for catalyzing private sector financing, which is in accordance with the Declaration 75 of the 10th BRICS Summit that took place in Johannesburg. Despite the efforts by existing multilateral development banks, there remains a major infrastructure financing void in BRICS and other African countries. The increased productivity, improved access to markets, higher employment, and other economic benefits which result from increased investment in infrastructure continue to lift large numbers of people out of poverty in developing countries. Thus, the NDB will play a pivotal role in job creation in order to alleviate the scourge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And here, Dave, I think that as South Africa, we need to really assist our people in understanding what the role of the bank is and how the projects are developed and how they can be accessed and so forth. As of July 2018, the NDB has approved 23 projects for about 5.7 billion in member countries. I don't know what is the figure for South Africa, and I think we can debate that. These projects now go beyond the core renewable energy sectors that were earlier focused on into areas such as rural roads, ecosystem restoration, water supply, particularly in rural areas, irrigation system restructuring, and energy conservation. By the end of this year, the expectation is that the total approvals will reach about 7.5 billion US dollars. In 2019, the target for incremental approval is about 7 to 8 billion. ADB, these figures are coming from the ADB 2018. The African Regional Center of the NDB was officially opened in Johannesburg on the 17th of August 2017, and Dave can tell the story of the arguments about where exactly to have this regional office, whether we needed to have it closer to Soweto, whether we needed to have it in Sentin, because government was also looking at development moving beyond the bigger cities. The ARC initial emphasis was on the identification and preparation of sustainable infrastructure projects in South Africa, in line with recently approved general strategy of NDP, as well as other projects that fall within the mandate of the bank. The NDP is also expected to play a crucial role in financing projects of the fourth industrial revolution, which was the focus of the Johannesburg Summit. Declaration 56 of the Johannesburg Summit welcomed establishment of the Brics Partnership on New Industrial Revolution. A New Industrial Revolution partnership aims at deepening Brics cooperation in digitization, industrialization, innovation, inclusiveness, and investment to maximize the opportunities and address the challenges arising from the fourth industrial revolution. It should enhance comparative advantages, boost economic growth, promote economic transformation of Brics countries, strengthen sustainable industrial production capacity, create networks of science parks and technology business incubation, and support small and medium enterprises in technology-intensive areas. The ADB is playing an immense role in financing infrastructure projects in the name of development in Brics and African countries in order to address unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Since the establishment of the ARC, the ADB continues to support development finance initiatives as part of mitigating market and development failures. This task of building an international economic system that benefits all our people across the globe must be a social compact between government, civil society, private sector, and academia. The primary responsibility of government in this equation is to create an enabling environment for the majority of our citizens to take their rightful place in the mainstream economy. And I do believe that through academic institutions, we will be able to continue to engage, to find best solutions, to make sure that we learn from each other, because we are here because we want to check what are our best practices and begin to share those experiences. As I close, I also would like to say, Professor, it would be important for students here to start looking at partnering with other students in the Brics countries and beginning to share their papers and beginning to talk to each other about the future, because as we are here, the future belongs to the younger generation, and all we are doing, the older ones, is to try and pass the baton, but we will not pass the baton to people who are not willing to carry it and appreciate how we got to be where we are, so that they can make the future to be a better place for themselves. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'd like to say that both your prepared text and your remarks were very helpful for all of us in coming to understand both the significance of what this meeting is all about and what the meeting could be achieving. So thank you very much, Minister. So we'll take a 15-minute break now, colleagues, and we'll resume with the program thereafter. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to disappear to too long.
Yeah, actually, he's on the trees from my computer. Yeah. No, I my 3G is fine. Okay. Okay, I'll wait for it. Yes, I need
Have you reinvented yourself? Of the fourth industrial revolution?
I want to. The only way I want to make sure that I put on a job. Like one of the 35% irrelevant. That's 35% is irrelevant. I was looking at all the jobs that I'm going to do. Like, it's a whole lot.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is why you need to reinvent yourself quickly. You are told me that. Where are you now?
And I'm going to council as well.
Oh, lovely. Don't keep quiet so much.
I'll try.
You know?
I will.
Yeah, please try and reinvent yourself. Next time I meet you, you are a fourth industrial revolution specialist.
中午跟我们一起吃饭，不一定吃完饭也不是1点钟跟我们见面的。
Oh, Lordy.